Anyway, our first reader tonight is, our presenter is Mike Phillips from right here in Astoria, Oregon. Mike worked on the Salvage Chief, which is probably the most famous salvage tug in the United States. I could probably say that with some authority. He was the diver, tender deckhand back in the 70s. And so welcome, Mike.
First time I was in this theater I was 6 years old, and I won my first bike. It was a Riviera theater at that time. I went on board the Salvage Chief in 1971 after being in the Army for 4 years, and my first job was a ship called the Liberty Manufacturer, and it had run aground entering Long Beach Harbor, ran aground on a rock because of a possible mutiny between the crew and the officers with paint scrapers. So we went on board and we offloaded everything from cowhides to bale ties to paper rolls to get it light enough for the Salvage Chief to pull it off. When we got it to that point, then the skipper, Reno, left me in the engine room, and the helicopter pilot up above, and some Filipinos that were in the engine room wearing life vests, as if that was going to do any good in the engine room. When they started to pull on the ship, I don't know if you can imagine the sound of a heavy ship scraping across rocks. And my job was to make sure that if something came in the shaft alley, that I would close it. But the first thing I did was close it. And then the water started to come in. It was an old steamship, and it hit the pipes, and then it started to steam up and everything. And it was about this far from going into the boiler when we finally, the helicopter pilot and myself, we put in 3 pumps tandem all the way from the bottom of the ship to the surface. And then we finally got it under control, and the job was a success. The second one was a ship in Hawaii. It was a barge, ATB 899 in Kauai, 32 miles from Kauai, and it had gone aground and tore the bottom out of it. And I was in one of the holes in the barge, and we were trying to weld one of the cracks in there, and the other guys went up for some reason, and the pump, it was a 50-pound, 220-volt, I didn't know it at the time, ungrounded pump. And it started to spray, and so I thought I'd lift the pump up and turn it. And when I did, I couldn't let loose of it. And so I was stuck to the bottom, and I was trying to throw the pump, and finally, somebody heard me hollering down there. Everything was slow motion and wavering and what have you. Anyway, so they unplugged the pump, and I set the thing right down, right in the same spot, because that's where I was stuck. And so I got out of there. It was pretty shaky, and up the ladder, and then they had the welding cords down into the hole there where we were welding. And so then I grabbed that, and I thought I got shocked again, and swung around and hit my elbow on the bulkhead. So when I got on, I had the electrical shock made me do one of my bodily functions. And my elbow had a baseball on it the size of this. But we finally, then we loaded on there 32 yards of concrete that they flew in buckets with a helicopter, and then we lowered it down and poured all that 5 gallons at a time in the bottom, and then we took it away, and it was a success. But The other one I'll mention is another barge that went aground up at Friday Harbor. And it was up on the rocks on the south side of the island there. And so we had to blast the rock out underneath of the barge. And the first time, well, Don Floyd, a lot of people know Don Floyd and I, we were there for a whole day with jackhammers under the barge setting charges. And then the end result was when we let them off, nothing happened. And then everybody in the island of Friday Harbor was out there shouting at us because we were using dynamite and what have you. But we did it again, re-drilled and got that barge off. I don't know how I'm doing for time. Maybe I'll have to tell one. Well, I'll tell you one that was on shore. It was a effluent outfall from a paper mill down in Eureka, California. That was, I think it was 2,000 feet out into the ocean. It was 39 inches in diameter, and it sprung a leak about 700 feet out in the ocean. So we went down there, and there was a big bale about 10 feet in diameter sitting on top of that we went into, and then they bolted us in, and then they had air pressure blowing into it. As we opened up the valve into the pipe, the air pressure started forcing all the water and effluents out of the pipe. And anyway, so there's 4 of us in there. I'm 6'2", 48 hours in a 39-inch diameter pipe. When we finally got out of there, and it was about 110 degrees just because of the air pressure going into the pipe to keep the water out. But we got it fixed, and then I'll just tell one. I don't really know a lot about this one, but it's a fishing vessel, Arctic Wind. On its maiden voyage up in Alaska, it was a king crabber. And I believe they were headed back to the dock with their load of 55,000 king crab. And they started taking on water and sunk. And so the salvage sheep went up there, and the divers went down and put airbags all around it underwater, and finally got it floated up above. And then a helicopter, a big Huey helicopter came with a basket, and then we loaded 55,000 crab into the basket, one basket at a time, and it was all, I don't know if you ever smelled a rotten crab, but it wasn't in very good shape. But if I have time, okay, let me check this list. Everybody likes a poem, right? This is called Relentless by Sonny Bell. A ship in trouble, rescue is on, mid storms at sea. The salvage chief anchors into battering surf, waves, relentless waters rushing, the sea pours itself aboard. Divers, seamen, cooks, engineers, captain, visionary, owner, the brave, the strong, the curious, the few, each with purpose, united in manliness to save, men work together. Tides fall and rise, which is rain and which is the sea. Choppers hover and deliver. Men relentless, a few women too, principled, powered, they need the rough life found only in the sea. Smokers, drinkers, partiers, swearers, fighters, give them a break to do what they do, to do what they are. They behave how they want. Tons upon tons of metal, hosing pumps, chains, generators, winches, relentless. Tons upon tons of water, sand, bravery, commitment. What is this? Who is this? The ship, the men, with their friend and foe, the sea, struggling, at last the lost child, pulled to birth, to new birth, a chance to live. The cold, the dark, the danger, the sea. The rest of us stayed in comfort, medicated with sterility and boredom. The crew of the salvage chief, alive with fury, midst bellows of raging water. How does a man face the sea at its worst? How does a ship persist against that same sea that captured its brother? He does not stop. It will not stop. They do not quit until the prisoner is freed. That trapped prey released to its rightful home, the formerly boundless surface of the seas. These men, this ship, the crew of the salvage chief, these are men to rely upon, a type of man not often known, relentless. Thank God for those that remain among us. The rest are home. And you know, the salvage chief is famous, but also fishermen are famous. They also go out there in the same kind of seas and fight the seas, and some of them have accidents and what have you. I know a fish boat that was run over in the Columbia River here, you know, by a freighter. And we have several other ones that we salvaged while I was on there. And a closing note, my last job was in Tapachula, Mexico. The port of Portland dredge had sunk right in the middle of the harbor down there. And anyway, we were tied up at the East End mooring basin at that time. Whenever we left or came back, all the families were there, you know, to see us off. And on the dock was I think he was about 4-year-old. He started crying, "Daddy, Daddy, don't go." So I made a choice right there. Went down there, but that was my last job. And that was 1975.
That's good.
Okay, thank you very much.